The reason actually that this was always in our agenda to talk about cult deprogramming is actually that there's so many dynamics of the way that social media works that mirror some of the social manipulative processes that occur in cults. And many listeners actually may not know this. And Steve, I don't know if you knew this, but I actually spent about 3 years going kind of touring different cults from the outside, going to large group awareness trainings, going into different groups. I had many friends in the Bay Area who were part of and participating in various new age cults. Asa would hear of my stories when I would talk about these various groups I would join. And there's such a different experience I think someone has when they actually participate in this. Because I think, Steve, the thing I'm so excited to get into with you is that people really underestimate the degree to which psychological influence can work in an invisible way, regardless of intelligence, regardless of PhD level. You find absolutely brilliant, interesting, smart, in fact, some of them maybe potentially more interesting and more creative and more thoughtful and independent minds in some of these groups. And there's many of the ways that social media has been working, as I said on the Sam Harris podcast years ago. It kind of acts like a cult factory. It identifies these buckets of human behavior that are similar. The people who are clicking on flat Earth videos, or the people who are clicking on various political tribe videos, and then pulling you deeper and deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. And so, what we're really excited to just speak with you about today is the dynamics of how cults work, and then we'll get hopefully all the way into a conversation about the techniques of cult deprogramming. Because I think if there's any discipline that is most needed right now to reverse our way out of the mind warp of the last 10 years of psychological derangement that social media has caused, it's the discipline of cult deprogramming. So we're just incredibly excited to talk to you today about everything you've got to offer. I think one of the actual challenges of cult deprogramming is the belief that those who are being accused of being in a cult get very defensive, right? And just to name that, no matter which group you might be a part of or which set of beliefs we might touch upon, try to come to this conversation, if you're a listener, with an open mind about really just studying what are the processes that have us go more and more extreme into a set of self-reinforcing beliefs and groups, and what would it take to kind of liberate us? So
Yeah, and if I may, Tristan, just say that my work is against
mhm.
authoritarianism on the left, on the right, in the middle, whatever form it takes, and I'm solidly in the human rights, like the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a doctrine. That's where I land. So I am for people being curious and exploring and trying all kinds of alternative methods and groups. But ultimately, I believe if you're an adult, you should be in control of your own mind and not turning over your power, getting rid of your conscience, your critical thinking, and having blind faith and having certainty that your doctrine is the truth with a capital T, no matter what it is.
Yeah, completely. So maybe, Steve, just to warm our listeners up for a bit to understand your personal story
Sure.
and how you got recruited into the Moonies. Who were you back then, and what were the steps along the way that got you recruited? I know this is sort of setting the table for
Oh,
listeners, but
yeah, no, it's really important. So I grew up in a very middle class Jewish household in Flushing, Queens. I was not a joiner. I was introverted. I wrote poetry and short stories. That was my major in college. I worked as a banquet waiter at a Holiday Inn in Hempstead while I was going to college to make my money. And I was worried about, I was in the last draft lottery, go to the Vietnam War. So I was very disillusioned with what I had been taught growing up about, fighting communists and how important it was to kill civilians in other countries. And when I realized that this was not something I wanted to fight in, and this was an unjust war, and that the government has been lying to us, I was like, I'm just not interested in politics, but wanting to make the world a better place. My story is not that unusual, actually. I was victimized by a honey trap Uh, my girlfriend had dumped me abruptly over the Christmas break at college. I was an upper junior. I was blue starting the new semester. I was sitting in the cafeteria of Queens College, and three very attractive women asked if they could share my table with me and were flirting with me. And I was like, wow, sure, here, sit on down. And I had a whole pile of college textbooks that I had purchased for the next semester. And they just asked me a billion questions. And I was so happy to tell them all about me. And I want to mark this part of my story, if I may, for your listeners, because back in the 70s, and I want to add, this was February of 1974. So the whole idea of cults was not mainstream, at all. But back then, you needed to elicit information about people directly from them. So tell me about your family. What does your father do? Oh, he has a hardware store that he took over from his father. What does your mother do? Oh, she teaches art for eighth grade. Do you have siblings? Yes, I have two older sisters. So they elicited everything about who I was and what was important to me. These days, all of this data is now being collected online and is being used by agents, bad agents, good agents, whatever, to sell us products or to recruit us into cults. So there isn't that need to find out what's going to work. And if I may take one more minute, when I was a Mooney recruiter, and that's part of the story, is they recruited me into a front group through deception. But when I was a Mooney recruiter, I was told to sort people into thinkers, feelers, doers, or believers. And the idea was people are all for, but like, what's their lead thing? Like if someone says, I'm a strong Christian, I pray every day, there's going to be a different recruitment scenario developed for that person versus someone who's like, I'm an atheist, but I want to fix the world and help starving children. Different angle. But back to my cult story, if I may. So they asked me all this information. Then they were like, we would love to get to know you better. You're so special and you're so wonderful. What's known as love bombing, which online is called swarming, I believe. They were just love bombing me up, and I was lapping it up because, wow, attention from three attractive women. And I do remember asking them, are you students? Yes. Are you part of a religious group? No. They looked me straight in the eye. And that's another thing I want to share with your listeners. My dad, who is a hardware store owner in Ozone Park, was like, Steve, you can always tell if someone's shady, they won't look you straight in the eyes. Like that was how I was inoculated by my dad. Well, these women were looking me straight in the eye.
People in cults are actually very good at actually looking you directly in
and
the eye
they were
persuasively.
very sincere, and I learned. And later, as I was helping people get out of Scientology, I learned they were actually drilling people to stare people in the eyes.
Wow.
And not blink, etc. So we can get into hypnosis and all kinds of other.
Well, actually,
tricks
just to mark a few things, because I think it's nice to interactively kind of go back and forth and name some of the features of what pulled you in, because the Vietnam War is happening. And there's a disenchantment with government. There's a disenchantment process, I hear, is part of that which preceded maybe going into something. Because I think there's some similar processes now, right? There's mass disenchantment with a lot of the systems that have run our society. That's one thing I heard you say. Another thing I heard you say is the affirmation and love bombing and lots of attention from attractive women. Just to make this concrete for listeners, with social media, if I'm designing a social media product, the first thing I want to do when you enter is say, boom, you're so special. What your interests are really special to us. We're going to give you all of these things. In fact, we're going to show you the most attractive people on here when you first open that TikTok app. We're going to show you the most attractive, either men or women. And as Yuval Harari's partner, Itzik, joked, it only took TikTok like 2 swipes to figure out that he was gay and then show him all the attractive men, right? So in a way, we're kind of love bombing you with attractiveness. And then we're saying this is a really cool environment. We don't stare you in the eyes maybe, but just to sort of make some parallels for listeners, then I'd love for you to keep going.
Yeah, attractiveness is important, but identification is even more important. That you're meeting people who are like you or people that you can
Right.
really relate
Right.
with. And so, as a recruiter, if we knew someone was like a disaffected Catholic from, the Bronx, and we had a disaffected Catholic from the Bronx, we would make sure to introduce
Well,
them
that's
to each
essential what you
other.
just said, right?
Which
Yeah, go
is
ahead,
of
Nate.
And which is, of course, what
Yes.
Facebook enables you to do at
Yes.
massive scale and with surgical precision. So you can ask the Facebook model, hey, show me all the people who believe in pseudoscience. And you get a big list of all those people. And then you can target exactly to like their
And Isa, you're
predilections.
talking about even using the
I'm
advertising tool, saying I want to target people who believe in pseudoscience. So that's like another dimension, which is that Facebook and these platforms give the they rent out that access for micro-targeting to other groups. So you can think of it as enabling other kinds of cults at scale. But even before you get to that, Asa, we know just from the Wall Street Journal did a great video about the TikTok algorithm that just, when you swipe a couple things and it actually tests like, hey, is it the religious videos that work with you? Is it the Catholic videos? Is it the dancer videos? Is it the soft porn videos for the, and it figures out which of these things work. And so just that matching, Steve, that you're talking about of making sure that we have people who look like me, because the creature brain inside of us, I'm taking my neurolinguistic programming knowledge out here, the creature brain is saying, am I with like kind? Am I with people who look like me? And that's what creates that trust.